The Audio Beacon, December 2021. A King is born. The Advent bells call out, "Prepare! Your world is journeying to the birth of God made man for us on earth." And how, in fact, do we prepare the great day that waits us there? For the 25th day of December, the birth of Christ. For some it means an interchange of hunting scenes on coloured cards, and I remember last year I sent out 20 yards laid end to end of Christmas cards to people that I scarcely know. They'd send a card to me, and so I had to send one back. Oh dear, is this a form of Christmas cheer? Or is it, which is less surprising, my pride gone in for advertising? Some ways indeed are very odd by which we hail the birth of God. We raise the price of things in shops, we give plain boxes, fancy tops, and lines which traders cannot sell, thus parcelled go extremely well. We dole out bribes we call a present to those to whom we must be pleasant. For business reasons, our defence is, these bribes are charged against expenses, and bring relief in income tax. Enough of these unworthy cracks. The time draws near, the birth of Christ, a present that cannot be priced, given 2,000 years ago. Yet if God had not given so, he still would be a distant stranger, and not the baby in the manger. John Betjeman. Hello all. Another month has passed, and we enter into winter proper. Where has this year gone? Having sadly said goodbye to Tim Wood last month, the ministry team has come together to keep the show on the road. With the help of external clergy, we have managed to keep a very full service roster, most notably last weekend with Remembrance Sunday, where all churches across the Benefice were able to come together to pause, reflect and remember. Speaking of reflection, in the last month or so, I have been given cause to really consider the cycle of life and renewal. On the 20th of October, my wife Natasha and I were blessed to receive our son Henry into the world. Many people had tried to describe to us the joy of a child coming into your life, but no one could have prepared us for this. Following hot on the heels of Henry's arrival, my much-loved cocker spaniel Otter had a litter of beautiful little puppies. Needless to say, we have our hands full. As I have considered all this new life around me, and watched the leaves in the garden fall, lots of raking to be done, preparing for the end of one year and the coming of spring after cold of winter, I can't help but draw an analogy with the current state of our Benefice. As we work to come to the end of a period of uncertainty and upheaval, it is my prayer that we enter into a time of rebirth and renewal in the coming year. This prayer extends to all of our community. The pandemic has been a huge time of upheaval, and I just pray, much like the fallen leaves around us, this time comes to an end, and as we move into Advent and the new year, we enter into a much needed time of renewal for us all. Richard. 2 Anglican commemorations in December with some local connections. 4th of December. During Advent, we are reminded of the 17th century deacon Nicholas Farah. At the age of 4, Nicholas was sent to school at Enbourne and is said to have been reading perfectly by the age of 5. He was confirmed by the Bishop of London in 1598. He was the guiding light of one of the most remarkable experiments in Christian community living in the history of Anglicanism. An English academic, courtier and businessman, he gave up his successful careers, was ordained a deacon and retreated with his extended family to the manor of Little Gidding in Huntingdonshire, now Cambridgeshire, where they lived in community. The parish around them was touched and enriched by their prayer and their teaching, as well as their care for the needy and the sick in the community. 31st of December. John Wycliffe was a Yorkshireman who studied at Oxford University, became a Fellow of Merton College and went on to win a brilliant reputation as an expert on theology. Ordained a priest in 1351, he spent most of his time at Oxford. Wycliffe had developed startlingly unorthodox opinions, which were condemned by Pope Gregory VII in 1377. He had come to regard the Scriptures as the only reliable guide to the truth about God, and maintained that all Christians should rely on the Bible rather than the unreliable and frequently self-serving teachings of popes and clerics. He said that there was no scriptural justification for the papacy's existence, and attacked the riches and power that popes and the Church as a whole had acquired. If clerics were accused of crime, they should be tried in the ordinary lay courts, not in their special ecclesiastical tribunals. His opinions gave him powerful supporters, including John of Gaunt, who intervened to protect him from infuriated archbishops and bishops. John of Gaunt granted the right of fishing on the River Kennet. Hungerford owns an ancient brass horn, which is said to have been given to the town by John of Gaunt as a guarantee of those rights. Wycliffe lost some support in 1381 when he denied the doctrine of transubstantiation. He believed that all Christians should learn the faith for themselves, and Scripture needed to be translated into their own languages. His most important achievement was the first complete English translation of the Bible, issued from 1382. Wycliffe has been hailed as the morning star of the Protestant Reformation. We are singularly blessed by the presence of authors in our benefice. After Patrick Whitworth's And Did Those Feet, described in the Church Times as a superb guidebook to nearly 2 millennia of the Church in England, we have Edward Brooke Hitchens' latest book, The Devil's Atlas. Packed with colourful maps, paintings, and captivating stories, the reader is taken on a compelling tour of the geography, history, and supernatural populations of the afterworlds of cultures around the globe. Whether it's the 13 heavens of the Aztecs, the Chinese Taoist netherworld of hungry ghosts, or the hell of the flaming rooster of Japanese Buddhist mythology, the Devil's Atlas gathers together a wonderful variety of beliefs and representations of life after death. Description on back cover. Jill Hornby's Miss Austen is now available in paperback. Enbourne notice. Enbourne C of E Primary School is on the hunt for a new governor. We are looking for people with experience and skills in the areas of finance and or safeguarding. The role is voluntary, with an expectation that you will attend 6 meetings a year and carry out other governance duties. This is a way to make a positive difference to the lives of children in our community. Enbourne is an outstanding rated Ofsted school with a proactive, capable governing board. To find out more, email eclark@enbourne.w-barks.sch.uk. We meet again. After a gap of 2 years, members of the local Franciscan group were happy to be able to meet again in Kintbury. After catching up with where we all are in these COVID-ridden times, we celebrated a simple Eucharist. As the Climate Change Conference has concentrated minds upon the problems faced by the world, and especially the poorer countries, we decided to study the Franciscan book Seeing Differently, and discuss our reactions in January. Hopefully, we might be able to resume our annual Quiet Day at Inkpen. The Benefice remembers. Kintbury. A large gathering at the memorial heard the names of the fallen. The congregation then entered the church, where our assistant archdeacon, the Reverend Liz Jackson, led the service. The scouts, brownies and guides formed a guard of honour, but, due to the prevalence of COVID infections, did not, this year, join the service. The church, therefore, was not so full as usual, but there was nonetheless a congregation of around 94, including a dozen children. Liz's sermon was well received, and a collection of nearly £300 was taken for the Royal British Legion. Pauline Pettit. 11:11 at Kintbury School. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them, responded the rest of the children. About 140 children, aged between 4 and 11, stood quietly round the edge of the school playground, while the Year 6 prayer leaders, each standing in one petal of the red-painted poppy in the centre of the playground, led the short, simple act of remembrance, with prayers they had written themselves. After the scrupulously observed 2-minute silence, children from Key Stages 1 and 2 laid the handmade poppy wreaths, and they all filed back into their classrooms to resume their morning's activities. Jenny Vesey. Inkpen Remembrance Service. A congregation of 70 assembled for the Remembrance Service at Inkpen, which this year was led by Major Simon Mosley. As always, the service was a very moving one, with the names read out of the 31 from Inkpen who gave their lives for our freedom in the 2 world wars. With the COVID situation over the last 18 months very much on our minds, Major Mosley in his address gave thanks for all members of the medical profession who have saved and cared for so many during the pandemic. Relating this Remembrance Sunday, he spoke movingly of 2 members of the Royal Army Medical Corps who in the First World War ultimately gave their own lives to save the lives of others. They were Arthur Martin Leake and Noel Chavasse, both of whom were awarded the Victoria Cross not once but twice, such an award being made only 3 times in the history of the British Armed Forces. As most will know, the Victoria Cross is awarded for valour in the presence of the enemy. For Martin Leake and Chavasse, their valour went beyond tending the wounded during the day, to going night after night into no man's land, at times at close quarters to the enemy, to rescue the injured and carry the dead back to their own lines. Both sustained injuries, but carried on. Their sustained courage is embodied in the words of the citation for Chavasse's first VC, which reads, "For most conspicuous bravery and devotion to duty. Truly the noblest of men." Gerald Atkinson. Enbourne. Remembrance Sunday was a most glorious day. The weather was dry and mild, and Hampstead Park looked wonderful with the trees arrayed in their autumnal colours. The day began with a joint service in the park, where we and Hampstead Marshall gathered around the memorial to the Screaming Eagles. Jenny reminded us that the young men were all strangers in a foreign land, not knowing whether they would see home and family again. In the service, we were told a little of the history of the 101 Regiment. We were reminded that the men from the park were involved in the fighting both in Normandy and in Holland, and how well the local population greeted the strangers in their midst. The service, conducted by Jenny and Richard, was a simple but moving one, which contained all the distinctive features of the Remembrance Service. The last post was played, wreaths were laid, and 2 servicemen in uniform saluted. This year, around 50 of all ages attended, some of whom walked to the service in Enbourne Church for the service conducted by the Reverend Tom Moffat. Tom had returned, having once been Area Dean. In a moving service here, we remembered the dead from Enbourne, ending the service with the singing of the national anthem. 2 crosses were laid near the graves of the 2 soldiers who died in England. At this service, it was gratifying to see the next generation amongst the congregation. Enbourne Presentation to Tim. On the 15th of November, John King, his niece Anna Stockwell, and Peter Seabrook were delighted to entertain Tim and Jane to a cream tea at the Yew Tree, where they presented Tim with a scarf chosen by Roger Pope. Enbourne has much to be grateful for to Tim and Jane. John King. Christmas for the New Edwardians. The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. L.P. Hartley. Queen Victoria had come to the throne as an 18-year-old in 1837 and reigned for 63 years. Consequently, at the turn of the century, in January 1901, the 20th century was deemed to have begun in 1901, not 1900, most people had known no other monarch. Victoria died on the Isle of Wight on January 22nd, 1901, and was succeeded by her son, the new king, Edward VII. And so, the people of Britain were no longer Victorians, but Edwardians. So what was the Christmas period like for the new 20th century Edwardians? I looked through the pages of the Newbury Weekly News to find out. The first thing that I noticed was that the Christmas period was much more low-key than at present, with very few Christmas-themed events, if any, and far fewer advertisements for Christmas goods. Life in our part of West Berkshire was not much different from any other 2-week period in the autumn or winter. Disappointingly, there are hardly any news reports from the villages in our area at this time, although there are several reports from Hungerford and a few from Kintbury. A colder spell before Christmas 1901 had resulted in the canal freezing over, such that the inhabitants of Hungerford had been looking forward to an old-fashioned Christmas, presumably looking back to the very cold winters of the mid-19th century. Hopes were dashed, however, when the weather turned wet and windy. To prepare for the inclement weather, inhabitants of Newbury could, if they so liked, purchase a mackintosh with velvet collar from between 5 shillings 11pence and 18 shillings 11pence from McElroy and Rankin of Cheap Street, and complement the new coat with an umbrella from 1 shilling 3 farthings. Bailey's of Northbrook Street boasted selling the cheapest boots, ladies at 1 shilling 9pence a pair, gentlemen's at 2 shillings 6pence, and children's at 1 shilling 4pence. Despite the availability of wet weather clothing, Hungerford Primitive Methodist Choir abandoned their customary carol singing in the town as the weather was considered too bad to go out. Perhaps, instead, they stayed at home and read by the light of a gas lamp, obtainable from Joseph Hobson of Newbury, which, it was advertised, would burn for 10 hours for only a farthing. Although outdoor carol singing might have been abandoned, the pages of the Newbury Weekly News reveal that much local indoor entertainment was music-based. Choral classes were established in Kintbury, with a Mr. S. Argyle conducting. The choir were practising a cantata called King Harold by Cunningham Wood. Also in Kintbury, a musical evening was held in the Wesleyan Methodist Church on December 18th, where members of the newly formed Guild Band were hoping to raise funds for a harmonium by presenting a concert of religious songs, instrumentals and readings. The band is only in its infancy, the Newbury Weekly News reported, and does not yet expect criticism, but promises to be worth hearing at no distant date. For the more energetic ladies of Hungerford, a spinster's dance was held at the town hall on a Friday before Christmas. It was attended by between 80 and 90 people, and took place between 8 o'clock and 3 o'clock, which, I am presuming, was AM rather than PM, although the report does not specify. I had expected to read something of children's Christmas parties, but if these were held in the local villages, no reports of them appeared in the pages of the Newbury Weekly News. Fundraising, however, did continue in Kintbury, where the week before Christmas £1 15 shillings 11pence was raised by the children of St Mary's School for Dr Bernardo's Waifs Association. On the subject of schools and education, however, a letter in the Newbury Weekly News reveals that a very retrogressive attitude toward education still existed in some sectors of society. despite this being the 20th century. A letter printed just after Christmas and sent from a former Newbury teacher reads, "Sir, I am sorry to notice in your paper that there are a few people who are still of the opinion that education is not good for farm labourers and other working folk. They themselves do not object to education, but on purely selfish grounds they would keep it from the poor, lest they should be less servile." If educational opportunities did not present themselves for the new Edwardians, servile or otherwise, an advertisement in the local paper suggested a career in the military might be beckoning, as recruits were wanted for all branches of His Majesty's army. I wonder how many local lads responded to the offer. On the Monday after Christmas, the Craven Hunt met at Wallington's, Kintbury, the residence of Mr. William Hugh Dunn. Attended by various of the great and the good of the area, the occasion was of particular interest, as a portrait of Mr. Dunn was presented to him in recognition of his service to the hunt. Elsewhere, the Christmas period was a quiet one. At Hungerford Market, corn had been in short supply due to the meagre attendance of farmers and traders. Anyone looking to buy native guano, however, could obtain a 100-weight bag mail order, which would be sent carriage paid to any station in England on receipt of a postal order for 5 shillings. I wonder how many were delivered to Kintbury, or whether the local equine population provided local gardeners with all they required. The Christmas period does not seem to have been a time of conspicuous consumption and overspending for the new Edwardians. However, should any one of them need some extra money, and just so happen to have an old set of false teeth lying around, an advertisement in the Newbury Weekly News of January 1902 has the answer. R.D. and J.B. Fraser of Princes Street, Ipswich, would buy your false teeth from you. So the new century was not without opportunities to make that bit of extra cash. Tessa Locke. Stop press. After months of frustration and trying every possible way, Phil has finally managed to get someone to listen and has been able to edit A Church Near You once again. Communication with the Benefice and the general public has been restored. End thought. A man in a passion rides a horse that runs away with him. Anger punishes itself. Sunday Reading for the Young, 1884. Services in the Walbury Beacon Benefice for December 2021. Services are subject to change. Please check with our website or a church near you for confirmation of services near the day. All our services are subject to the current government restrictions and will require social distancing, wearing of face masks, etc. Sunday, 5th of December. Enbourne, Holy Communion Benefice Service and on Zoom, 9:45 a.m. Inkpen, Holy Communion, 8:30 a.m. Sunday, 12th of December. Kintbury, Holy Communion, 8 a.m. Christmas evening, 6 p.m. Inkpen, Parish Communion, 9:45 a.m. West Woody, Holy Communion, 11:15 a.m. Sunday, 19th of December. West Woody, Christmas Carol Service, 11 a.m. Coombe, Carol Service, 3 p.m. Kintbury, Holy Communion, 9:45 a.m. Inkpen, Carol Service, 6:30 p.m. Friday, 24th of December, Christmas Eve. Kintbury, Crib Service, 2:45 p.m. Holy Communion, 11:30 p.m. Saturday, 25th of December, Christmas Day. Coombe, Holy Communion, 11:15 a.m. Hampstead Marshall, Holy Communion, 9:45 a.m. Inkpen, Holy Communion, 9:45 a.m. Enbourne, St George's, to be confirmed, 9:45 a.m. West Woody, Holy Communion, 11:15 a.m. Kintbury, all age service, 9:45 a.m. Sunday, 26th of December, Boxing Day. No service details available at time of going to press. Tuesday, 14th of December, 3 p.m, Holy Communion at Inglewood, Kintbury. Items please to fill on pji@crestednewtcomputing.co.uk.